This is the most interesting tier of the video by far, and specifically the most interesting player is Pat Friermuth. Who would have assumed Pat Friermuth would be this high in projections? I was shocked when I saw it. I couldn't believe it. What's going on, everybody? It's your good friend Trey here, back again with another rankings and tiers video. Today, we're going to focus on the tight ends. So if you've never seen my videos before, how this works, I'm going to take the top 24 tight ends in PPR formats. I'm going to average out their per game scoring outputs. That number is going to be around 10.5 fantasy points per game. That's your perfectly average tight end. We're going to take that number and compare it to the tight ends and figure out who we want, who we don't want, who's an extreme fade, who's a possible fade, who we need. So let's dive into it right now. This is how the tiers break down. We got your best weekly edge, a huge weekly edge, good weekly edge, slight weekly edge, right side of average, and then the wrong side of average. So that is how it's going to break down. And our first tight end is going to be Trey McBride. Maybe a surprise to some of you, maybe not. You might have expected to see Brock Bowers here at 1. We're going to find Brock Bowers here in the second tier by himself. So the scoring difference between these two players is not huge, but it is significant. Trey McBride, we have at about 16.2 fantasy points per game, and Brock Bowers, we have at 14.71. So again, both great. You know, the difference between them is 1.5 points ish. And, you know, again, both would be fantastic to have on your team. But I'm going to make the case for Trey McBride with these statistics. So Trey McBride, of course, famously had 2 receiving touchdowns in 2024. He ran 510 routes, over 510 routes. So that's significant because there's been 9 tight ends who have run 510 plus routes in a season since 2021, and only Mike Gesicki in 2021 finished with 2 touchdowns or less. So a little bit of an outlier there. 4 of those 9 tight ends scored 8 or more receiving touchdowns. So we like to see that. We like to see that many routes run. Obviously, that's a great thing. So you probably heard this term before, and it's probably overused, but Trey McBride is the quintessential positive regression candidate. And what that means is that it's probably not likely that he's only going to score 2 touchdowns again if we see that same volume. We're going to use some elementary school math here, as I like to do. Keep it simple. Trey McBride scored about 19 fantasy points less than Brock Bowers in 2024. And we're going to, you know, do some quick math. 6 points for a touchdown. He scored 3 less touchdowns than Brock Bowers. Well, there's 18 points. So they're virtually the same player. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. I'm not saying this to say that Bowers isn't going to improve and potentially be better. It's certainly possible he has a better season than Trey McBride. But what I am saying is that these two players should be treated as identical almost in either direction. But when Trey McBride comes off the board 10 picks after Brock Bowers, that's significant in my book. So if you're picking in the 5, 6, 7 range and you watch my wide receiver and running back videos, you'll see, you know, it's possible to land like Puka Nacua or Malik Neighbors with the first pick. You could take Trey McBride with the second pick and then possibly go Rashee Rice or Devontae Adams, depending on if you went Puka, you know, Neighbors, since they both put the Adams and Puka play for the same team with that third pick. And then you could go Kenneth Walker in the 4th. And I think that's an incredibly strong start to your fantasy draft. So it's not a knock on Brock Bowers. He's a great player. I'd love to have him on my teams. We're just talking about value here, and the value is with Trey McBride, and you should be targeting Trey McBride. And I'd be drafting Trey McBride over Brock Bowers, but that's, you know, not necessary at this point because Brock Bowers is going ahead of him. So yeah, I don't want to dog Brock Bowers. He's a good player. Let's move on to tier 3 by himself. George Kittle. We all love George Kittle. He's a player worth buying. So he's alone in tier 3. He's going almost 30 picks after Brock Bowers and 20 picks after Trey McBride. And at that price, it's tough to stay away. I know some of you maybe were a little squeamish when I said earlier that Kenneth Walker would be your RB1 if you followed, you know, my videos in that direct draft path. So Kittle's an opportunity to, you know, nab a running back earlier and end up with that really strong tight end, if that makes sense. And I think Kittle has potential to be the tight end 1 in 2025. So the case for Kittle is very simple. He led the position in fantasy points per game last year. That sounds good enough. I mean, that's the case for why he could be the tight end one. Scott Barrett loves to say that he's the most underrated player of our generation. The stat that Scott cites frequently is that Kittle has led tight ends in yards per route run in 7 of the last 8 seasons. So he is just a true superstar at the position. So like I said, if you're worried about Kenneth Walker being your RB1, go the Kittle route. The dream draft plan for acquiring George Kittle would be something of this nature, but I will say this is pretty risky and it has a little bit of a stretch, but it is possible. You're going to go with that Nakua Neighbors route at 9. That's where about both those guys are going. They could be gone at that point, but around 9. Then it's Christian McCaffrey at 16. So if you can accomplish that, right, then that opens the door to reach on Kittle. I would take him with a 33rd pick. And then when you're around like pick 40, you're looking for whoever's left of Devontae Adams or Kenneth Walker. And obviously, if you're going to roll out a Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle team, you want to add Brock Purdy to that later in drafts and ride that 49ers stack to the promised land. So I love George Kittle, always have. And I think he's a great pick again this season. So let's bolt on over to tier 4, a very interesting tier, maybe the most interesting so far, but not the most interesting of the whole video. So stick around. I got some good stuff coming for you. But simply in this tier, we're going to fade Sam Laporta and we're going to target Travis Kelce with Jonnu Smith as a backup plan. The reason for this, Sam Laporta, after Ben Johnson's departure, is coming off the board early in the 5th round, and Travis Kelce and Jonnu Smith are coming off the board at the 6-7 turn. So the tier itself is separated by 0.41 fantasy points per game. And Kelce specifically is just 0.22 fantasy points per game behind Sam Laporta. So it's a marginal difference, and the ADPs allow us to scoop up some value and weight on these guys. So it's one of the safer fades out there. Because again, you have 2 options. So you take Kelce and you're good to go. If Kelce for some reason goes, I know he is a popular name, Jonnu Smith is a pretty decent consolation prize. Like I said, 0.41 points between him and Sam Laporta. So it's tough to get screwed over with that type of plan, assuming these ADPs stick. So assuming the ADPs stick and assuming Jonnu Smith doesn't end up in Pittsburgh, which will throw a wrench into tier 5 also. So great segue there by me. Tier 5. This is the most interesting tier of the video by far, and specifically the most interesting player is Pat Friermuth. Who would have assumed Pat Friermuth would be this high in projections? I was shocked when I saw it. I couldn't believe it. But the story of this tier is at the polls. Friermuth is the top of the tier, and TJ Hockenson is the bottom of the tier. But their ADPs are completely reversed. So TJ Hockenson has an ADP of 53.2, which means that he's coming off the board 1 pick after Sam Laporta in the early mid 5th round. And Pat Friermuth is being taken in the early 13th round. That's not a mistake. I'm not misspeaking. That is the difference between these two. And Friermuth is straight up the better option by projections. It's very close, but he's the top of the tier, and they're that far apart. At that price, this is a guy in TJ Hockenson that you put a red line through. You cannot justify drafting TJ Hockenson with what's going on in this tier, and even what's going on in the next tier. You're going to see more of the same. So this tier here, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Colston Loveland, Dallas Goedert, we always give the rookie exception. Rookies can come on later in the season and that can really change something and swing some leagues. So we're never going to count out a rookie, but with this tier, you're going to fade this entire tier because everybody in this tier is being selected ahead of Pat Friermuth. What are we doing? He projects better than every player after him. David Njoku, Zach Ertz, TJ Hockenson, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Colston Loveland, Dallas Goedert. He projects better than all of those players, and he's going after them. He's not going after Zach Ertz, which I will also mention. If you're going to do this Pat Friermuth strategy and wait until the 13th round, Zach Ertz is your fallback plan. So as far as the numbers go, again, Zach Ertz projects better than TJ Hockenson and projects better than the entire 6th tier and he's going 4 picks after Pat Friermuth. So he's like we talked about with Jonnu earlier. That's a little bit of a backup plan for you in case things go haywire. But yeah, I just could not believe Pat Friermuth. I mean, what the heck? We have him right here, tight end 7. Like this tier, that tier 5 is separated by only like 0.3 fantasy points. So they're all in the same boat. But how can he be going that much later than TJ Hockenson? I know it's star power and name power, but yeah, I just thought, I don't know. Am I going to put TJ Hockenson as the thumbnail to a video? Not TJ Hockenson, excuse me, Pat Friermuth, because like no one is that interested in Pat Friermuth. 13th round, it's crazy, but that's put a potential, skeleton key to your team for if you're, in auction leagues. People say in non-super flex, $1 for a quarterback, $1 for a tight end. Well, that's your $1 tight end, Pat Friermuth. That's your totally punting on the position, and you can get Friermuth and probably Zach Ertz late and have a kind of a backup plan for your backup plan. I mean, if you're not going McBride, Bowers, Kittle, you're probably not going Laporta anyway. But if you miss out on Travis and Jonnu Smith in that tier, like, it's really nice to have these 2 guys back there that you can bank on so late that you could just focus on everything else between rounds, 6 and 7 and round 13. And you can really add some depth to that team. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I've been really happy with the success of my first 2 videos. And yeah, it's been nice getting this 3rd video recorded and out and just keeping on top of stuff. So like I said in the last video, the only way to have a friend is to be one. So make sure you're leaving comments, likes, whatever, subscribe if you're going to continue to watch the videos. I don't want anybody to subscribe that's not going to watch the videos. So don't feel like you're doing me a favor doing that. But comment. If you did watch one and you're not going to watch any more, comment, because I'll respond. I respond to all the comments. So thank you guys so much for checking this out, and we'll see you next time.